The galactic conglomerate had never encountered a species quite like humans. Admiral Vex of the Taurian fleet watched through the observation panel as the latest batch of human prisoners was processed into Facility Omega-9, known throughout 17 Star Systems as the most secure detention center ever constructed. In 6,000 years of operation, not a single escape had been recorded. "You seem troubled, Admiral," said Director Krell, his translucent appendages rippling with bioluminescent patterns of superiority. "I assure you, these humans will be contained like all the others." Vex's primary eyes narrowed. "The reports from Earth concern me. Their resistance was unusual. All species resist initially," Krell dismissed with a wave of his upper limb. "The humans are merely louder about it." The humans below were being fitted with neural suppressors, devices that should render them docile and compliant. Yet Vex noticed something odd. While the other species in processing hung their heads in defeated acceptance, the humans maintained eye contact with their captors. Some even smiled. "That one," Vex pointed to a broad-shouldered male called Jack. "He's been captured 3 times. Already, keeps finding his way back to Earth's resistance." "Impossible," Krell scoffed. "No one escapes Omega-9. Nevertheless, he has. And now he's allowed himself to be captured again. Deliberately." Below, Jack Thompson was catalogued along with 5 other humans. Marcus, a former pilot. Elena, an engineer. Ben, an older man with a background in chemistry. Lisa, whose file marked her as a simple grocer, though Vex suspected otherwise. And Tom, barely an adult by human standards. These 6 were considered high-value targets, leaders or specialists in Earth's resistance movement. After the conglomerate's initial invasion 3 Earth years ago, humans had proved remarkably adaptable at warfare. What they lacked in technology, they made up for in creativity and sheer stubborn determination. "They're dangerous," Vex insisted. "They're primitive," Krell countered. "Their civilization hasn't even achieved unified planetary governance. Their weapons are crude, their ships can barely reach their own moon. And yet they've destroyed 7 of our harvester vessels and liberated 3 processing centers." The humans were herded into their designated cell block, a specialized wing designed with enhanced security measures for particularly troublesome species. The walls were phase-shifted quartz titanium alloy, the energy barriers triple-layered, and the surveillance systems backed by both AI and biological monitoring organisms. Krell activated a neural scan on the main console. "See? Their brain patterns indicate confusion, fear, exactly as expected." Vex wasn't convinced. Something about the readings seemed rehearsed. "I want guard rotations doubled, and full-spectrum monitoring." "A waste of resources," Krell complained. "But as you wish, Admiral." As they exited the observation deck, neither noticed Jack's slight nod to Elena, nor the way Tom had stumbled, seemingly accidentally, against the sensor panel during processing, planting a microscopic device that would begin its work long after lights out. In their cell block, the humans were silent, watching the movements of the guards, the positioning of the cameras, noting the timing of the security scans. To their alien captors, they appeared subdued, perhaps finally broken by the reality of their imprisonment. But inside Jack's mind, a clock had started ticking. 24 hours. That was all they needed. The plan was already in motion. Night cycle. Aboard Facility Omega-9 brought a different kind of illumination to Cell Block H. The soft blue glow of reduced lighting meant to disorient nocturnal species and provide comfort to diurnal ones. For the humans, it was simply another variable to factor into their escape. Jack lay on his bunk, eyes closed but mind racing. The neural suppressor at the base of his skull emitted a faint hum, a sound that should have been accompanied by a foggy lethargy in his thoughts. Instead, his consciousness remained crystal clear. "They never learn," Marcus whispered from the adjacent cell. "Third time they've used the T9 suppressor model on me. Same firmware vulnerabilities." Before his capture, Marcus had been implanted with a subdermal counter-signal device, undetectable to standard scans and designed by Elena herself. It didn't just block the suppressor, it fed false readings back to the monitoring systems. Elena pressed her palm against the transparent barrier between their cells. "You getting the layout from Tom?" Jack nodded slightly. Tom, despite his youth, had an eidetic memory. During their brief journey through the facility's corridors, he had memorized every junction, every security checkpoint, every service access point they had passed. 7 levels, Tom murmured, eyes closed as he mentally mapped the facility. We're on level 5. Detention processing is on 3. Hangar bays likely on 1 or 2. And the phase shift generators? Jack asked. Sub-level, probably. I caught glimpses of power conduits running downward at junction points. The phase shift generators were the key to Omega-9's legendary security. They kept the entire facility slightly out of sync with normal space-time, making conventional physical escape impossible. Matter couldn't simply pass through the barriers. It had to be phase-matched first. Ben, the oldest of their group, sat, cross-legged on his bunk, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Atmospheric composition is standard oxygen-nitrogen with trace elements. Pressure slightly higher than Earth normal. Gravity at 1.1 g. Lisa, who had been silent until now, spoke softly. Guards. Rotate every 3 hours. 4 different species. The Vrel need humidity breaks every 30 minutes. The Cantharians change shift 12 minutes earlier than scheduled due to religious observance. Jack smiled faintly. Lisa's cover as a simple grocer had fooled even the conglomerate's intelligence division. Before the invasion, she had been one of Earth's foremost behavioral analysts. What about the other prisoners? Jack asked. 17 species, approximately 3,000 individuals, Lisa replied. Most have been here for years. They've adapted to captivity. Stockholm Syndrome is evident in many. There'll be no help. Ben picked at a loose thread on his jumpsuit. I've identified 11 distinct compounds in the air recycling system. If I can access a terminal, I can trigger a selective sedative release. Jack nodded. The pieces were coming together. Elena? She held up a small object no larger than a grain of rice. Somehow she had smuggled it past the thorough searches. Remote access module. Once I plant it in a primary junction, I can create a localized phase match bubble. It won't last long, maybe 40 seconds. That's all we need, Jack said. What about the enforcer units? Enforcers were the facility's robotic security. Humanoid machines equipped with neural disruptors and programmed to respond to any disturbance. Leave those to me, Marcus grinned. Remember New Beijing? Jack remembered. Marcus had reprogrammed an entire battalion of enforcers to target their own command structure. As the night cycle deepened, the 6 humans continued their analysis, speaking in coded phrases whenever a guard passed. Their cells might be monitored, but the conglomerate's translation algorithms still struggled with human idioms and metaphors. Outside their cell block, Admiral Vex stood before a bank of monitors, watching the humans with growing unease. They're too calm, he said to the duty officer. Too accepting. The suppressors are functioning normally, the officer replied. Brain patterns indicate submission. Vex's antennae twitched. Increase surveillance frequency. Something's not right. The humans had been in Omega-9 for exactly 6 hours. Their 24-hour countdown was ticking steadily forward. At precisely 0700 facility time, alarms blared throughout Level 4 of Omega-9. A draconian prisoner had apparently suffered a psychotic break, attacking both guards and fellow inmates with surprising ferocity. Containment team to Block D. The announcement echoed through the corridors. Medical emergency. Jack watched as 3 guard teams rushed past their cell block. He caught Elena's eye and nodded slightly. The diversion was right on schedule. What the conglomerate didn't know was that the draconian resistance had allied with human forces months ago. This particular prisoner had been carefully selected for the mission. His species could enter voluntary catatonic states that mimicked death, then awaken with a surge of adrenaline equivalent that made them temporarily stronger and impervious to pain. Phase 1 complete, Jack murmured, as the corridor emptied of security personnel. The timing was critical. With the facility's attention directed toward Level 4, Elena activated the microscopic device Tom had planted during processing. It sent a pulse through the security grid, not enough to trigger countermeasures, but sufficient to create a 3-second diagnostic loop in the surveillance system. 3 seconds was all Lisa needed. Her fingers moved with surgical precision, removing a small panel near her cell's waste reclamation unit, a blind spot in the cell's monitoring system. From within the panel, she extracted 6 metallic objects no larger than sewing needles. "Ready," she whispered. The neural suppressors at the base of each human skull were the first obstacle. Designed to be irremovable except by authorized medical personnel, they would trigger a facility-wide alert if tampered with. However, the suppressors had one weakness. They required constant power to maintain their connection to the central monitoring system. Lisa inserted the needle-like device into a specific point at the base of Jack's skull. The suppressor continued to transmit normal readings, but its actual effect on his nervous system was neutralized. 45 seconds, Ben warned, keeping track of the time before the next automated security sweep would detect any anomalies. One by one, Lisa disabled each suppressor. To the facility's systems, the devices appeared fully functional. In reality, the humans were now completely free of their influence. As the Level 4 situation continued to escalate, Jack moved to the next phase. From beneath his artificial molar, missed in the body scans due to signal interference Elena had engineered into their dental work, he extracted a miniature transmitter. "Marcus, you're up." Marcus closed his eyes, concentrating. Before his capture, he had been implanted with a neural interface that allowed direct communication with compatible technology. The transmitter Jack had passed him would extend that capability. "Targeting facility systems," Marcus whispered. "Firewall is adaptive, multi-layered." There. Found a packet vulnerability. His consciousness slipped into Omega-9's network, a dangerous infiltration that could be detected at any moment. The strain showed on his face, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he navigated the alien architecture. "I'm in the environmental controls," he finally said. "Redirecting oxygen levels now." Throughout the facility, oxygen concentrations began to subtly shift, increasing in cell block H, decreasing in guard stations. Not enough to be immediately noticeable, but enough to make security personnel slightly lethargic while heightening the humans' alertness. Meanwhile, Tom had been working on the cell doors. The locking mechanism was beyond even their advanced preparation, a quantum-entangled system that couldn't be hacked or forced, but it could be tricked. Using a combination of pressure points and temperature manipulation techniques, applied precisely to the door's edge where the molecular bonding was weakest, Tom created a momentary structural resonance discrepancy. "Now, Ben," he whispered. Ben spat a capsule he'd been hiding sublingually onto his palm. Breaking it open, he applied the compound to the edge of his cell door where Tom had indicated. The chemical reaction was instantaneous. Not an explosion, but a minute disruption in the door's phase coherence. For 1.2 seconds, the door existed in a state of quantum uncertainty. It was enough. The lock disengaged. On Level 4, the Draconian's rampage reached its peak. 3 guards lay unconscious, and the facility's response teams were fully committed to the situation. Admiral Vex, however, was not so easily distracted. He stood in the command center, eyes narrowed as he studied the monitors showing cell block H. "Something's wrong," he said. "Run a deep scan on those human biosignatures." The officer complied, but before the scan could complete, every monitor in the command center flickered. "System maintenance protocols engaged," the computer announced. "Diagnostic cycle initiated. Estimated completion time, 3 minutes. Vex slammed his appendage against the console. "Override. Security Protocol Alpha 9. But it was too late. Marcus had already locked them out of the system. In cell block H, Jack stepped out of his cell and smiled at his companions. Time to move. The service corridor beyond cell block H was bathed in emergency lighting, casting long shadows as the 6 humans moved in perfect formation. They had 12 minutes before the automated systems would reset and detect their absence. "This way," Tom whispered, taking point. His eidetic memory guided them through the labyrinthine structure of Omega-9, avoiding patrol routes and security checkpoints with uncanny precision. They reached a maintenance junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Above them, the constant hum of the facility's massive ventilation system provided cover for their whispered planning. "We split here," Jack said. "Elena, Ben, you're with me. We're heading for the phase shift generators. Tom, take Marcus and Lisa to the command hub on Level 2. The division of their small team was calculated. Each group now contained the skills necessary to complete their objectives independently. Synchronized timepieces, Jack ordered. Each human activated a subtle glow beneath the skin of their wrists, subdermal chronometers that had been implanted prior to their capture. Rendezvous at the hangar bay in exactly 37 minutes. As they prepared to separate, a mechanical whir sounded from the corridor behind them. An enforcer unit rounded the corner, its optical sensors immediately locking onto the escaped prisoners. Unauthorized personnel detected, the machine intoned, its voice eerily calm. Return to your designated areas immediately. Marcus stepped forward, a slight smile playing on his lips. He raised his hand, revealing a small device he'd assembled from components harvested from his disabled neural suppressor. "Hey, Tin Can," he called. "Access code, Prometheus." The enforcer froze, its operational lights flickering from blue to red, then back again. The humans tensed, ready to scatter if Marcus's gambit failed. After 3 seconds, the machine's voice lowered in pitch. "Override accepted. Awaiting instructions." Security protocols. "Omega Red," Marcus commanded. "Execute and maintain." The enforcer immediately turned and headed back the way it came, now reprogrammed to create false alerts throughout the facility, drawing security away from the humans' intended path. "That won't work on all of them," Marcus warned. "The newer models have quantum encryption." They separated, each group vanishing down a different corridor. Jack led Elena and Ben deeper into the facility, descending toward the sublevels where the phase shift generators were housed. These massive machines were the heart of Omega-9's security system, keeping the entire facility slightly out of phase with normal space-time. 3 guards ahead," Elena whispered, consulting a small device that detected life signatures. "Non-human, Cantharian physiology." Jack nodded to Ben, who removed a small capsule from his mouth, another compound he'd smuggled in by exploiting the conglomerate's incomplete understanding of human digestive tolerance. Breaking the capsule, Ben released a gas that was harmless to humans but acted as a powerful sedative to Cantharian nervous systems. Within seconds, the guards slumped at their posts. "We have 8 minutes before they're missed," Ben warned. The trio moved past the unconscious guards and approached a massive door marked with alien symbols that translated roughly to "Authorized personnel only, phase shift control." Elena immediately went to work on the access panel. "It's a 13-digit encryption sequence that changes every 73 seconds, she muttered. "Good thing we prepared for this." From her jumpsuit lining, she extracted a microfilament wire and inserted it into the panel's diagnostic port. The wire contained a pre-programmed sequence designed to exploit a specific vulnerability in the facility's security architecture. "This would be impossible," she explained, "except that all conglomerate systems are based on the same mathematical foundation. Their species never developed prime number theory beyond the basics." The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the phase shift generator room was a cathedral of alien technology. Towering columns of pulsing energy surrounded a central core that thrummed with power. The air itself seemed to waver and distort around them, a visual manifestation of the space-time manipulation occurring. "Beautiful," Ben whispered, momentarily awed by the technology that had kept countless prisoners trapped for millennia. Jack snapped him back to reality. "Elena? How long?" Elena was already moving toward the main control console. 4 minutes to recalibrate, 2 minutes to create the phase bubble, 30 seconds to stabilize. "You have 6 minutes, Jack said, checking his chronometer. "Not a second more." Meanwhile, on level 2, Tom led Marcus and Lisa through increasingly secure areas of the facility. Twice they were forced to hide as patrols passed, and once Marcus had to remotely trigger an environmental alarm 3 corridors away to draw security from their path. "The command hub should be through the next section," Tom whispered, consulting his mental map of the facility. Lisa touched his arm, halting him. "Wait, listen." In the distance, they could hear Admiral Vex's distinctive voice, raised in anger. "I want every available unit searching for those humans. They are not to be underestimated." Tom exchanged a worried glance with his companions. Their window of opportunity was closing fast. Admiral Vex stood in the central security nexus of Omega-9, surrounded by a flurry of activity, as facility personnel responded to the multiple alerts triggering across all levels. His primary eyes narrowed as he assessed the tactical display, showing the various disturbances. "It's too organized," he hissed to Director Krell. "These aren't random malfunctions. The humans are executing a coordinated escape attempt. Krell's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with agitation. Impossible. The suppressor readings show all prisoners contained in their cells. The alerts are merely system glitches from the draconian incident. The readings are falsified, Vex insisted. Lock down all hangars and launch platforms. Deploy elite units to the phase generator room immediately. In the sublevels, Elena's fingers danced across the alien interface as she reprogrammed the phase shift generators. The technology was advanced beyond human science, but her study of recovered conglomerate devices had prepared her for this moment. 2 minutes, she announced, not looking up from her work. Ben stood guard at the entrance, while Jack prepared the next stage of their plan. From compartments hidden within their bodies, surgically implanted before their capture, they assembled small devices that would serve as personal phase shields once activated. Hurry, Jack urged. Security's been alerted. Elena's concentration never wavered. Almost there. The system's trying to compensate, but I've locked it into a recursive loop. It thinks it's still functioning normally. The massive columns around them began to pulse with a different rhythm, the energy field visibly fluctuating as Elena manipulated the controls. There, she exclaimed. I've created a phase match window. It'll hold for exactly 40 seconds once activated. The facility's warning systems suddenly blared to life, the piercing sound signaling a maximum security breach. They've found us, Ben said grimly. The entrance door slid open, revealing 4 enforcer units, their weapons primed. Behind them stood Admiral Vex, his alien features contorted in what the humans recognized as triumphant rage. I knew you would come here, he said. Your species is nothing if not predictable in your arrogance. Jack stepped forward, positioning himself between the Admiral and his companions. You're right about one thing, Admiral. We are predictable. Without warning, the lights throughout the facility flickered and died, plunging the generator room into darkness. Emergency systems kicked in seconds later, but by then, Jack had already moved. The first enforcer went down with a precision strike to its primary power coupling, a vulnerability Marcus had discovered during their previous encounters. The second fired its neural disruptor, but Jack was no longer where it had targeted. Elena activated her phase shield, the device creating a localized bubble that rendered her partially out of sync with normal space-time. The Enforcer's attacks passed harmlessly through her as she completed the final sequence on the generator controls. Ben, meanwhile, had released another chemical compound, this one creating a dense fog that confused the Enforcer's optical sensors. Admiral Vex bellowed orders, but his voice was drowned out by a new alarm, this one signaling a complete phase shift failure across the facility. Now! Jack shouted. Elena slammed her palm onto the activation control. The generator room filled with a blinding light as the phase shift temporarily reversed, bringing the entire facility back into normal space-time for the first time in millennia. 40 seconds, Elena called, her voice strained with effort as she maintained the override against the system's automated countermeasures. Across the facility, prisoners suddenly found themselves able to pass through barriers that had contained them for years. Most were too conditioned to captivity to recognize the opportunity, but some, those who had been secretly contacted by the human resistance, were ready. On Level 2, Tom, Marcus, and Lisa had reached the command hub just as the phase shift reversed. The security personnel were thrown into confusion as systems throughout the facility reset and rebooted. 30 seconds, Marcus murmured, checking his chronometer as he connected to the main control interface. His neural link allowed him direct access to the facility's core systems. I'm in, he announced. Sending the command sequence now. Throughout Omega-9, security doors began to open. Environmental systems recalibrated, and most importantly, in the massive hangar bay on Level 1, a conglomerate transport vessel powered up, its engines humming to life under the control of Marcus's remote commands. Back in the phase generator room, Jack faced off against Admiral Vex, while Elena and Ben moved toward the exit. The Admiral's organic exoskeleton made him a formidable opponent, even for Jack's enhanced reflexes. You cannot escape, Vex growled, his secondary arms unsheathing what appeared to be ceremonial blades. This facility has stood for 6,000 years. No species has ever escaped. Jack smiled grimly. There's a first time for everything, Admiral. He dodged the Admiral's first strike, countering with a technique that exploited the joint limitations of Vex's species, another weakness identified during previous encounters. 15 seconds, Elena called from the doorway. Admiral Vex lunged, again, one blade slicing through Jack's jumpsuit and drawing blood. But the human's expression never changed as he sidestepped and delivered a precise blow to the nerve cluster at the base of Vex's primary neck. The Admiral staggered, momentarily paralyzed. Humans, Jack said, backing toward the exit, are not like other species, Admiral. We don't accept imprisonment. We adapt. We overcome. And most importantly, he gestured to the failing phase generators. We learn from our mistakes. 5 seconds, Elena shouted. Jack turned and ran, joining his companions as they sprinted through the corridor toward the emergency lift that would take them to the hangar level. Behind them, the phase generators reset with a deafening boom, the facility shifting, back out of normal space-time, trapping anyone who hadn't moved during the brief window. Admiral Vex, regaining control of his limbs, roared in fury as the humans disappeared from sight. The hangar bay of Facility Omega-9 was in chaos. Alarms blared as security personnel scrambled to respond to multiple breaches across the facility. Through this disorder, 6 humans moved with purpose, converging on the conglomerate transport vessel that hummed with pre-launch preparations. "Status?" Jack demanded as they regrouped at the vessel's loading ramp. Tom glanced at his chronometer. 7 minutes until they can reset the security protocols. Lisa was monitoring the facility's communication channels through a small device implanted in her ear. They're organizing a full lockdown. Vex has ordered the hangar bay sealed. Marcus grinned. Too late. I've already overridden the bay door controls. They're locked open. The group boarded the transport, each moving to pre-assigned positions. Elena and Marcus took the pilot stations, their fingers dancing across the alien controls with practiced familiarity. This isn't going to be a clean getaway, Elena warned. They've activated the defense grid. Outside, automated weapon systems. We're swiveling toward the transport, their targeting systems locking on. We knew this was coming, Jack reminded them. Stick to the plan. Ben was already at the rear of the vessel, accessing a panel that controlled the ship's transponder system. Recoding our signature now. To their systems, we'll appear as an authorized personnel shuttle in 3, 2, 1. The defense grid hesitated, its targeting solutions suddenly confused by the conflicting identification signals. That won't fool them for long, Lisa cautioned. It doesn't need to, Jack replied. Marcus, execute Phase 6. Marcus closed his eyes, his neural interface connecting directly with the facility's mainframe one final time. What the conglomerate didn't know, what Admiral Vex had never suspected, was that this escape was about much more than the freedom of 6 humans. Uploading now, Marcus whispered, his face tense with concentration. What he was sending into Omega-9 systems was the culmination of 3 previous failed escape attempts, a sophisticated virus designed to infiltrate the conglomerate's network and spread throughout their entire infrastructure. On the command level, Admiral Vex watched in mounting horror as his consoles displayed the system breach. "Shut it down," he ordered frantically. "Sever all external connections." Director Krell's appendages moved desperately across the emergency protocols. Too late! It's already transmitted to the central hub. The virus wasn't designed to destroy. That would have triggered immediate countermeasures. Instead, it methodically located and extracted specific information: prisoner manifests, security protocols, facility layouts, and most importantly, the phase shift technology specifications. Information is more valuable than destruction, Jack had explained during their planning sessions on Earth. The conglomerate has maintained control through technological superiority. We level the playing field by acquiring that technology. As the transport vessel lifted off, its engines glowing with power, the hangar bay doors began to close, the facility's automated defense systems finally overriding the humans' manipulations. We're not going to make it, Tom said, eyes fixed on the narrowing gap. Elena pushed the engines beyond safety parameters. Yes, we are. The transport shot forward, scraping against the barely open doors with a screech of tearing metal. Atmosphere vented explosively into space as they broke through, the damaged vessel tumbling momentarily before Elena stabilized their trajectory. We're clear, she announced, but their escape was far from complete. On the facility's exterior, defense cannons tracked their movement, preparing to fire. Initiate jump sequence, Jack ordered. Ben looked up from his console, his expression grave. The jump drive is damaged. We don't have enough power for a full jump. This wasn't part of the plan. Without the jump drive, they would be overtaken by conglomerate pursuit ships within minutes. Jack made a quick decision. Reroute all non-essential power. Life support, artificial gravity, everything. We need that jump. As the others worked frantically to comply, Jack moved to the communication array. This had always been the most critical part of their mission, more important even than their own escape. He activated the quantum transmitter, a device of human design that the conglomerate had never encountered and couldn't detect. Its signal would bypass conventional communication channels, transmitting directly to resistance cells throughout occupied space. To all resistance forces, Jack began, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Operation Phoenix is complete. The data package is transmitting on secure channel Epsilon. The phase shift technology is ours. The implications were staggering. With the phase shift specifications, human scientists could develop countermeasures against the conglomerate's most powerful containment technology. Every prison facility they operated would become vulnerable. Jump drive at 63%, Elena reported. It's not optimal, but it might be enough for a short jump. Outside, the first defense cannon fired, a bolt of energy narrowly missing their vessel. Now, Elena, Jack ordered. She activated the jump sequence, the damaged drive protesting with ominous vibrations that shook the entire ship. Stars blurred around them as space-time distorted. Differently than the phase shift, but equally reality-bending. For a brief, terrifying moment, it seemed the drive would fail completely. Then, with a final surge of power, the transport vessel vanished from normal space, escaping into the relative safety of hyperspace. In the breathless silence that followed, the 6 humans exchanged glances of mingled relief and triumph. 23 hours and 17 minutes, Tom announced, checking his chronometer. We broke out in less than a day, Jack smiled grimly, and changed the war forever. 3 months later, Jack stood before the United Earth Defense Council, the scars from Omega-9 still visible on his face. Behind him, a holographic display showed the stunning results of Operation Phoenix. 17 conglomerate detention facilities, breached, over 30,000 prisoners from 100 different species freed, and most importantly, a fundamental shift in the balance of power in the galactic conflict. The conglomerate has relied on technological superiority since its formation, Jack explained to the assembled leaders. Their phase shift technology was their greatest advantage, allowing them to create impenetrable facilities and weapons systems that operated outside normal space-time parameters. General Reynolds, head of Earth's military forces, leaned forward. And you're certain they don't suspect how we acquired this information? Admiral Vex suspects, Jack admitted. But the conglomerate high command believes our success was mere luck, a temporary malfunction they've since corrected. Their arrogance blinds them to the truth. The truth was elegant in its simplicity. Over 3 carefully planned, failed escape attempts, Jack and his team had gathered the information they needed, piece by piece. Each capture and subsequent escape had been designed to collect specific data and test different aspects of the facility's security. What they never understood, Jack continued, is that humans don't think like the other species they've conquered. We don't accept the impossible. We study it, we test it, we break it down into solvable problems. Elena stepped forward, now taking her turn to address the council. The phase shift technology has been reverse-engineered. We've already implemented protective measures for our major cities and military installations. The conglomerate can no longer simply phase shift through our defenses. The implications were revolutionary. For the first time since the invasion, humanity had a genuine defensive advantage. Marcus joined them at the podium, his neural implants now visibly enhanced with new technology. Additionally, the virus we planted continues to spread through their systems. We receive new intelligence daily. Their entire command structure has been compromised. What about the other species? Asked a council member. The ones you freed. Are they willing to fight? Lisa addressed this question. Many have lived under conglomerate rule for generations. They've been conditioned to accept their dominance, but seeing it challenged, seeing humans accomplish what they believed impossible, has ignited something. Resistance movements are forming throughout conglomerate space. The holographic display shifted to show footage from across the galaxy. former prisoners organizing, sharing human tactics, adapting Earth's strategies to their own unique abilities and environments. We've created a coalition, Tom explained. Each species brings different strengths. The Draconians have already liberated 3 of their colony worlds. The Araxians have disabled 2 conglomerate harvester fleets. Ben, who had been quietly observing until now, finally spoke. But we should be prepared. The conglomerate will adapt. They've ruled for thousands of years because they're ultimately survivors. And they now recognize humanity as their greatest threat. The council chamber fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. The initial euphoria of their successes was tempered by the reality of what lay ahead, a prolonged conflict against a vastly more established enemy. Jack stepped forward again. That's why what we learned at Omega-9 matters beyond the technical specifications. We learned how they think, how they respond to threats. Their psychology is built on assumptions of inherent superiority. They don't innovate. They perfect. They don't adapt. They overwhelm. He gestured to his team. 6 humans with limited resources breached their most secure facility in less than 24 hours. Not through overwhelming force, but through creativity, cooperation, and courage. These are the weapons they can't counter because they don't understand them. Admiral Vex had been right about one thing. Humans were different. Throughout their history, they had faced extinction-level threats and survived. They had adapted to every environment their planet had thrown at them. They had looked at the impossible and seen only problems awaiting solutions. The conglomerate believes they're fighting to maintain control, Jack concluded. We're fighting for our existence, and that makes all the difference. As the council session ended and strategies were formulated, Jack and his team stepped outside, into the sunlight of an Earth still bearing the scars of invasion, but now alive with something that had been missing before. Hope. Tom looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere above them, conglomerate ships were regrouping, planning their next assault. Do you think they'll ever understand why they're losing? He asked. Jack followed his gaze upward. Probably not. That's their weakness. They see other species as variables to be controlled. They don't understand that you can't contain the human spirit. It's not in our nature to accept limits. Elena joined them, datapad in hand showing the latest intelligence from the front lines. The coalition forces just liberated the Taurian homeworld. The conglomerate fleet retreated after only 6 hours of engagement. Marcus smiled. 6 hours? I thought they'd last at least a day. They didn't expect the phase shift countermeasures, Elena explained. Their weapons passed harmlessly, through the coalition shields. By the time they adapted, it was too late. Ben and Lisa approached from the council chamber, their expressions serious despite the good news. The council has approved the Jupiter Defense Initiative, Lisa informed them. We're building 6 more facilities based on what we learned at Omega-9, but as protection, not imprisonment. And the conglomerate prisoners? Tom asked. Being treated according to the coalition accords, Ben replied. No neural suppressors, no phase shift containment. We're better than them. We need to remember that. Jack nodded approvingly. Humanity's edge wasn't just their adaptability or creativity. It was also their capacity for compassion, even toward those who had shown none. Admiral Vex sent another transmission, Lisa added. He's still demanding your surrender, personally. Jack laughed. Send him my regards. Tell him I'll meet him again someday. You really think they'll keep coming? Tom asked. Jack looked at his team. The 6 humans who had broken the unbreakable, escaped the inescapable, and changed the course of the war in less than a day. Of course they will, he said, and we'll be ready. Because that's what humans do. We prepare, we adapt, we overcome. As they stood together watching Earth's defense systems glimmer to life in the atmosphere above, technology derived from their hard-won knowledge, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Not just in what they had accomplished, but in what they represented. In a universe of ancient species and established powers, humanity was the wild card, the species that refused to accept limitations, that saw barriers as challenges rather than boundaries. The species that broke out of an inescapable prison in 24 hours, not because they were stronger or more advanced, but because they refused to believe in the impossible. The conglomerate had made one crucial mistake. They had judged humanity by the standards of all the other species they had conquered. They had expected submission, acceptance, defeat. They hadn't understood that humans had been testing their own limits since they first looked up at the stars. And they never would. The end